This morning, Alan Dershwitz joins us, Harvard Law professor emeritus and author of the book, The Case Against Impeaching Trump. Well, now I guess the question is, impeaching Kavanaugh? I mean, does it look like Democrats are planning a strategy to do so?
That would be absolutely foolish, inconsistent, and hypocritical. Those who believe that Bill Clinton should never have been impeached for allegedly lying about his sex life are now going to lead the campaign to impeach Kavanaugh for allegedly lying about his sexual and drinking activities back when he was a 17-year-old. It's hypocrisy run rampant. The Constitution would not permit impeachment of a sitting justice for actions he took while a private citizen 35 years ago, nor, I think, would it permit using the laws of perjury, which are very tough. They have to be about a material fact. It has to have been a deliberate lie, not forgetfulness, not a boast, not an exaggeration, but a willful, deliberate lie about a material fact. I think that the Democrats are shooting themselves in the foot. We ought to be moving forward. Let's judge Justice Kavanaugh on his performance as a justice of the Supreme Court. I'm particularly outraged at my colleagues and students at Harvard Law School, those of them who have made it impossible for Kavanaugh to continue to teach there. It's rampant McCarthyism at its worst, reminiscent of what I experienced when I was a student at Brooklyn College in the 50s, where professors were fired because it was suspected that they went 17 or 20 years old. They might have been members or fellow travelers of the Communist Party. We just have to put an end to this.
How do you do that, though?
And these kinds of vengeance inquisitions have to stop.
How do you do that?
Well,
I mean, obviously, we've come to this point. Does it get worse? Does it get better? What changes?
I think the leadership of the Democratic Party has to take control over their rogue members and has to be able to tell individuals like Maxine Waters, who says she wants to impeach virtually everybody for everything, including Mike Pence, that's not what the Democratic Party is all about. The Democratic Party has to become more mainstream. It has to look to the future. Look, the Democrats lost this election. The president was going to appoint a conservative. If it wasn't Kavanaugh, it would have been some other conservative, maybe somebody even to the right of Kavanaugh. And the idea of searching for reasons not to confirm and violating all kinds of due process. And now comes the ACLU, which puts money before principle. And my question to the ACLU is, how are you going to appear in front of the Supreme Court now? You've clearly alienated at least one of the justices, maybe even more. I think the ACLU has lost its credibility as a litigation arm of the progressive cause, and they may have to recuse themselves when they come in front of the Supreme Court. This has become a total mess, and we have to begin to move forward and not take revenge for past losses.
You have written a fascinating op-ed on foxnews.com, and I would urge our viewers to read it. You say you're a liberal Democrat. You'd like to see Democrats take back control of the House. If that happens,
that's right,
Jerrold Nadler becomes chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, where articles of impeachment would originate. Listen to what he says.
This has got to be thoroughly investigated. I hope the Senate will do so. If he is on the Supreme Court and the Senate hasn't investigated, then the House will have to.
So what would be your advice to Representative Nadler?
Well, first of all, do not move toward impeachment. He hasn't mentioned the I word, impeachment, yet. As far as an investigation is concerned, let the investigation be about the confirmation process. Let's have a bipartisan investigation and see if we can improve the process. Maybe have more checks, FBI checks, prior to a nominee being nominated, so we don't have these kinds of surprises, ongoing investigations. There are things we can do. Maybe have a commission that nominates to the president the 10 most distinguished people who could serve on the Supreme Court, and let the president agree to pick from that instead of picking from the Federalist Society. There are a lot of things that can be done to improve the process. Investigating Kavanaugh is not one of them. Impeaching Kavanaugh is certainly not another of them.
Despite what we talk about here today, Alan Dershwitz, there are still many Democrats vowing a fight, including Mazie Hirono from Hawaii. And here's her latest thinking on where this goes next.
Should Brett Kavanaugh be impeached if Democrats take control?
I'm much more focused on the here and now, which is that we have an election coming up, and I've said to the women who are who are justifiably angry but determined. And I said they should be just focused like a laser beam.
We're left wondering what exactly that means, Ellen, but she did not say no to a fight for impeachment.
Look, I think she's right. I think Democrats should focus. I think they should try to take over the House. That becomes an important part of our system of checks and balances. If the Democrats can take over the Senate, then they will have enormous influence on the next Supreme Court nominee. That ought to be the focus. Look, Brett Kavanaugh was not my choice. I'm a liberal Democrat. I would have appointed Merrick Garland again. But the Democrats have to be wise and sensible and just and moral and not violate due process and civil liberties in an interest of wreaking revenge on a loss that was in large part self-inflicted by extremists within the party.
I want to read part of that Fox op-ed that you wrote. You say, Democrats may try to move it forward by alleging that the grounds for impeachment include perjury committed by nominee Kavanaugh. But that would, in his testimony at the Senate Judiciary Committee confirmation hearing, but that would be a ploy somewhat akin to the phony perjury grounds used to impeach President Clinton. You think there are comparisons?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I think there are comparisons, and the irony is that the very same people who justly complained about the use of perjury against Bill Clinton are now demanding the use of perjury against Kavanaugh. Do they have no shame? Do they have no memory? Do they have no concern about being called hypocrites? Is it really the case that if the shoe is on the other foot, the principle goes out the window? Shame on Democrats who would apply the same principles that they opposed when Bill Clinton was impeached to impeach a sitting justice of the Supreme Court. Shame on them.
Professor, I think it was Mazie Hirono, who we heard from just a second ago, who also said that now looking forward, Brett Kavanaugh's time spent on the Supreme Court will be tainted, was a word she used. She said there will always be an asterisk next to his name. What do you expect, finally, if you could, Brett Kavanaugh's time on the Supreme Court to look like, considering this intense fight he went through for confirmation?
He will be like other justices, a conservative. He will move the court slightly to the right. My hope is that, having been through this horrible experience, maybe his sensitivities will increase toward due process, civil liberties, the right of free speech. But the asterisk next to his name is ridiculous. He was confirmed. He will serve on the Supreme Court. There will be no asterisk. He will be judged like every other justice. I will agree with some of his opinions. I will disagree with others' opinions. I'll write op-eds criticizing the opinions I disagree with. That's the way our system of checks and balances should operate.
I know that you also said in that op-ed, an investigation into 36-year-old charges against a sitting justice would be an abuse of the powers of Congress. Incredibly strong points you make. Such an investigation, you write, would simply be partisan payback for Kavanaugh's confirmation. Professor Alan Dershwitz, thank you. Good to start off the week with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.